No need to get surprised. I'm well aware that it was on 22nd of April. But for us, every day is an Earth Day. Each day is a day of action. Well, I am Vivek Pandey. I work as a consultant at UNICEF. I support strengthening of WASH facilities at state level. I also have had opportunity to work on emergency preparedness and response. It's indeed an honor for me to welcome our distinguished experts, panelists, and the viewers watching us live. I, on behalf of all organizers, welcome you all to this captivating panel discussion on youth for climate change, water resources, and WASH, that is water, sanitation, and hygiene. I have always felt that every challenge comes with an opportunity as well. And at this time, when climate anomalies are biggest challenges, we also have the maximum number of youth living on this planet Earth. And this is where the opportunity lies. We need to empower ourselves. And this event is one such initiative to educate us and to disseminate the real life experiences. This event is being organized under the campaign Youth for Water, supported by UNICEF, that targets to sensitize and engage youth on WASH and climate change actions. This popular campaign aims to connect with more than 1 lakh youth on environmental related issues. To brief you up with this campaign, we have a small video coming up.
जल ही जीवन मनीष समेत समस्त प्राणी और उद्भिद जीवन धारणर प्रमुख माध्यम हेउछि जल। किंतु विडंबनार विषय लोकंक भितरे जल अपचय और संरक्षण दिगरे सचेतनतार अभाव रहिछि। तेणु जल परिमल और परिच्छन्नता अर्थात वाश को नहीं लोकंक भितरे सचेतनता सृष्टि करिबा पई कार्य करूछि यूथ फॉर वाटर अभियान। यूथ फॉर वाटर हेउछि युवपीढ़ी एवं युवपीढ़ी द्वारा एक अभियान। युवपीढ़ी देशर भविष्यत। तेणु युवपीढ़ी को एही अभियान सह जोड़ी वाश एवं जलवायु परिवर्तन संपर्क में सचेतनता सृष्टि करिबा यूथ फॉर वाटर अभियानर मूल लक्ष्य। यूनिसेफ ओडिशा सहायतार यूथ फॉर वाटर अभियान ओडिशा रे एक वाश विप्लव आनिबाकु जाउछि। फोर्स एवं वाटर इनिशिएटिव एथिरे सहयोगी थिबा बेले विभिन्न क्षेत्रर सहभागी द्वारा यह परिचालित हेउछि। जदि आपण एही अभियान रे शामिल हेबाकु चाहुछंती तेबे यूथ फॉर वाटर फेसबुक ग्रुप रे जॉइन करंतु और एही सचेतनता अभियानर एक अंश होंतु।
That was really awesome, and the efforts are really praiseworthy. I hope you would connect to this campaign. So please try connecting us through this Facebook link. And before we broach this discussion, let me have a pleasure of thanking all our viewers, those who have joined us. Thank you all. Thank you so much for your valuable time. And I'm sure that this discussion today would edify you all and strengthen your capacities towards building up a sustainable and adaptive ecosystem. All our viewers can also interact with the panelists through comments and likes. So friends, please keep posting your comments and likes. So now it's time to meet our eminent experts and young panelists who have been putting up their efforts to promote sustainable lifestyles. To begin with, we have Mr. Arjen Nafs as an expert who is a hydrogeologist joining us from Netherlands. He has more than 2 decades of working experience on climate change, WASH, and water resources. He is a climate change activist and stalwart of his own field. Mr. Nafs, very good morning. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. I would request you to please unmute and introduce yourself to the participants. Sir, please.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Arjen Nafs. I'm Dutch, based in Netherlands. And my background is in hydrogeology and groundwater, but I'm passionate about water in general and interface between the challenge of the climate crisis and around that. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you for your introduction, sir. Next in the panel, we have Mr. Deepan Diggal, who works in mining affected areas with tribal youth. He is a social entrepreneur as well. I would request Mr. Deepan to please introduce himself. Deepan.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Johar. Myself Deepan Diggal, and I belong to Kandhamal district. And me and my team are specifically working with the people of mining affected areas and specifically with the tribal communities for their holistic development. and more specifically in building a relationship between human being and the environment as well. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Dipan. It's great to have you in this discussion today. We also have Mr. Keshav Sani with us, who is a youth engagement expert, and he is working to raise awareness on 2030 agenda among youth. Keshav, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Vivek. So yeah, as Vivek mentioned, myself Keshav this side, and it's been 4 to 5 years that my life moves around SDGs, and we are trying to initiate a network across Asia Pacific, which we call 2030 Youth Force, where we basically work on the awareness and advocacy on the 2030 agenda. So I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Keshav. I'm sure you would bring better insights to this discussion today when it comes to involvement of youth. Now we have Mr. Naresh Behra, who works on managing e-waste. He is a founder of a startup company called Gadget Reviver. Naresh, please.
Hello and namaskar, my friends. And I am Naresh Behra. I am founder of Gadget Reviver, and basically I do management of e-waste, like refurbishing and repairing of different electronic items like laptop, desktop, and every electronic item, IT. And also I am an active member of Youth for Water, in which I post about different climatic situation and how we will solve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Naresh. Well, seems like you are going to make it an enticing one today. Coming up next is Mr. Sarthak Sarangi, who is associated with Nehru Yuva Kendra Sangathan, India's largest youth network under the ambit of Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Sarthak, please.
Thank you, Vivek. My name is Sarthak, and by qualification, I'm an MBA with specialization in WASH. Currently, I'm working as a consultant in various projects related to water sanitation and hygiene, mostly in and around solid and liquid waste management, and currently engaged with the Nehru Yuva Kendra Sangathan, which is one of the largest youth network in the country, mainly responsible for the WASH related activities, driving the youths, building their capacity, and also I have experiences with various urban local bodies in the state towards convergence of the sanitation workers and their livelihood under various flexi projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarthak. So I guess you have an important role to play today in this discussion. Now we have Ms. Sasmita Mahapatra. She is an eco-entrepreneur. She works as a senior facilitator with Tata Strive. She is a certified career counselor as well. Sasmita, please.
Thank you, everyone, and Namaste, Odisha. Yes, I'm working as a professional in training industry, but I always advocate for environmental issues. So that interest brought me here to start a startup called Giftcraft, which is working to promote sustainable and eco-friendly products. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Sasmita. I'm delighted to have you in this panel today. And I guess many budding entrepreneurs will find your session quite useful. So now, moving ahead, we have Ms. Smriti Swan. She is an agriculture expert, and she directly works with farmers on ground and promotes sustainable agricultural practices. May I request Smriti to please introduce herself?
Thank you, Vivek, for your brief introduction. Good morning, Aryan, and good evening, everyone, all the panel members and all the viewers who have joined in Facebook. I am Smriti Rupa Swai, postgraduate in Agriculture, Extension and Communication, currently working as a documentation coordinator in Youth for Water campaign, Odisha. So I have 6+ years experience in agriculture sector, and my area of interest in working with farmers in grassroots level organization. So yes, I'm happy forward for this panel discussion. Thank you.
So Smriti, I just wanted to acknowledge all your efforts, because we know India is an agrarian country. So it's good to have you today here in this discussion. So viewers, we have got a quite diversified panel, and this is surely going to be a very interesting one today. So moving ahead onto this panel discussion, I would request Mr. Navs to take over for his session. Mr. Navs, please.
Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here, and the width and the breadth of the colleagues that we have on the panel shows that climate change is something that is affecting and interesting a lot of people. And my joy is to present you the linkages between water, water sanitation and hygiene, and climate change. And I'll take a few minutes to take you through with that. We all know that COVID was all about hand washing. Hand washing is one of the components of WASH. And basically, we all have to start with good hygiene, but we need to do more to be able to resist the climate change crisis that is coming. And the climate crisis actually is a water crisis. When we look at it, there's either too little water with high temperatures and drought, basically changing the rainfall patterns and people struggling to have access to drinking water for animals and livelihood, also for agriculture. The other problem is that there's too much water. It's basically, there's flooding, you get sea level rise, you get other damages related to intense rainfall, and basically the weather is becoming more extreme. And the last one is that there's a lot of pollution happening. Basically, salinity, for instance, from the sea, that's coming in because of the higher sea levels and because of bad management of all different types of pollution. And what does that mean? Basically, it will make all existing challenges that we have even more difficult. It will make it more difficult to face population growth. It makes it difficult to tackle and manage urbanization. Inequalities are becoming bigger. And it mainly affects people, or it affects mostly the people who have done the least to cause it. And I'm sitting here in Europe. I know that we have got a very large component of having caused the climate change, whereas the people that have had the least to do with it are feeling the effects. And the climate injustice is one of the things that we're all concerned about and trying to change. Now, just on water and climate change, there are two components when you talk about climate change. One is mitigation, which is basically trying to avoid it becoming hotter. The second one is adaptation, is learning to live with the consequences of the climate change. First, going to go for mitigation. And most of you will be very surprised that the most common greenhouse gas is not carbon, but it's actually water. Basically, think about the clouds that are above us. 60 to 70% of our normal heat trapping is actually the water cycle. Just highlights how important it is. Just saying, it is a short cycle of about 9 to 10 days, whereas carbon can be in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, and methane, which is the other component, for a couple of years. Methane comes from sanitation, as well as from many agriculture and other components, and a lot of bio fields, for instance, swamps and things like that. But for sanitation, it is one of the reasons to contribute to the crisis. And the third one is that pumping water around takes a lot of energy. It is one of the key energy consumptions within any municipality. And therefore, anything that can be done to reduce that will be helpful. Now, all the world has committed to something what's called the Paris Agreements. There have been very lofty statements made under the NDCs, National Determined Contributions. The one of India is still has to be updated, but for instance, Bangladesh and many other countries have done new commitments in 2021 for the COP that was there, the meeting in the UK. So what could we do? When we just look at water, I've already mentioned a little bit, we can try to reduce the amount of water we use, but first by losing less, which is basically trying to stop leaks and ensuring that all the water is being used. The second thing is securing that the water that we use for drinking is actually good quality. So protecting of a source actually makes sure that we can be using less energy. And then there are things like using solar or other energy optimizing things when you're using trucks or things like that. And you can do of biogas in sanitation, you might have natural gas you can use for energy creation. But the real interesting thing comes in adaptation, and that's what we'll be talking about most of today. Adaptation is really at the core of what we have to do with water, and water is central to adaptation. Basically, what we have is a climate crisis. One slide has disappeared. I'm very sorry. What I was going to say, 90% of all the crises are water related. All of the disasters, water crises are water related. And what we see with that is that we have challenges all related to water. It is the center of all the components if we want to adapt. You will find it throughout. If you talk about agriculture adaptation, urban adaptation, it all is either floods, droughts, and at the moment, the heat wave in India is, of course, also a manifestation of a lack of water for all the cooling that needs to be done. And we have to realize one more thing. The water we want to use for drinking is really actually a very precious resource. Just to give you an idea, 97% of all the water in the world is salt, is in the oceans, in the seas. Only 3% is fresh. And of that, most of it is in our glaciers, in the Himalaya, or on the North or the South Pole. Of the remaining water, most of it is in the groundwater, with much more difficult ways of using it and being accessible. And actually, only 0.3 is all the fresh water you see of the lakes and the rivers and even on the atmosphere. So we're talking about a very small percentage. So we really have to cherish it and make sure that we are taking care of it. And that's where we go to adaptation, learning to live with it in a meaningful and sustainable way. So the first example is making sure that we capture and store water at all levels, within a catchment area, within the nature, but also within cities and towns. Capture and store it. Try to re-infiltrate it into the ground, buffer it. And of course, in Odisha, for instance, rainwater harvesting has been promoted as well as one of the ways. The second one is securing water quality. And we all know pollution, we've all seen it. But it affects very much our access to drinking water and the ability to secure water for other purposes. So we have to make sure that we avoid pollution and that we are aware of it. So monitor citizen science, for instance, checking the water quality, and if needed, doing household water treatment or within the utility. The next one is allocating water to people in vulnerable circumstances. As mentioned, it's usually those that live in difficult circumstances that are the hardest hit. And this goes with a lot of planning. This goes with inclusion. It goes with the right policies to make sure that people are included. And that is actually part of what we call IWRM, Integrated Water Resource Management. It is about allocating what water to which groups of users, either industry, agriculture, or drinking water. And it's quite essential, particularly in countries like that have a big agriculture push, that we are able to reserve water for drinking. We all know that in India, the Green Revolution has seen a lot of water being tapped from the groundwater, and water levels have gone down very much, giving problems for people to actually just have drinking water. So we have to work together to make sure that that can be solved and worked upon, either changing crops or the way and where we are extracting. This is, of course, not only a climate issue, it is a bigger issue on water management. And you will find that coming throughout our conversation today, that addressing one problem often also has a gain on another side. So improving water management for agriculture also helps buffering and preparing against climate change, as well as for other components. Similarly, saving water saves energy, and your water bill will be less. Your energy bill will be less. And the final one is physical infrastructure changes, making, for instance, in the rural areas, raised platforms in case of flooding, securing your latrine in a better way so it can stand the cyclones better. And there's a whole host of different ways how we can make pipes and pumps more secure, safer, and resilient by having a buffer and extra capacity and having ways to react once things might be breaking or suffering from a climate event. So with that, I'd like to close it. The climate crisis is a water crisis, but it is something that affects us all. And I'm really looking forward to the variety of questions and discussions we're having now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nafs, for such an insightful session. And I personally have noted few points and would surely get back to you when the floor is open for discussion. Thank you so much. So we have something coming up for the audience as well. And we have an audience poll. So the question for the audience is that, people, what do you think? Are your water provisions affected by climate change? The options are yes, no, and don't know. And you can respond to this poll just by commenting into the chat box, or you can just post your comments with the options A, B, or C. And we'll look at the results in the later part of the event. Meanwhile, just a reminder to all our audience that you may also post your questions in the comment box. We will try to take it to our panelists today. So once again, I just repeat the question. What do you think? Are your water provisions affected by climate change? Yes, no, don't know. Please respond to it. Those who are on chat, please comment your options on Facebook. You can. Okay, so let's move ahead into this discussion. And now I would like to go to Mr. Deepan Diggal and see what he has to share. Let's reach out to him and see his experiences and what he has experienced on the ground related to water resources, youth, and climate change. Deepan Diggal, please.
Thank you very much, Vivek. It was a wonderful session. Aryan, thank you so much for putting insight so deeply and so widely studied, and the activities, the measures which can be taken into consideration, of course, for preservation of water. I am really very much delighted to hear this from you. Thank you so much, Aryan. I would also like to share my experience during my working period, and which actually inspired me to get in touch specifically to the mining areas and the type of lifestyle the tribals live. So basically, while working with the communities, I've been working since 7 to 8 years, and I have been associated with the tribal communities. The communities which are displaced out of mining. When mining is done, this specifically a huge human habitation is displaced from, and it is rehabilitated to somewhere else. And during this process, what we very minutely and very important point is to be located is that the cultural aspect and the relationship between the people and the environment is lost forever. Of course, some basic amenities is established when these people have been rehabilitated and kept in one place, but the natural environment where they were sustaining, where they had built their relationship with the environmental elements, that has been lost forever. And while working the tribal communities, I have seen these people basically they don't find the basic communities, some of the environmental element, which water is also a very the number one thing out of that. While traveling kilometers away and fetch a bucket of water is something very different when you find by opening at your hand a tap. So when we see this thing, these people travel a long distance and fetch water, and after getting this water, they bring back, and innovatively, or what you can say by generations and generations, a practices has been developed of less consumption, no over consumption of water. no extra usages of water. And of course, what can be done? They are very much concerned about what can be done and how it can be preserved, whatever water they have brought, of course. And I have seen a very inseparable relationship between tribal people in terms of conserving the nature as well as the environmental elements, which is carried forward to their generations and generations. And it has been developed as a culture. So this, and we basically, me and my team, we promote the existing activities which they practice to the other people living around in and out of the areas. And they have the natural resources which is already taken away from there. But still then they try to conserve the natural resources and show an extra concern towards the ecosystem conservation. And traditional knowledge is, yes, of course, very important. And what I feel, we should learn the activities and the way of lifestyle and the culture which these people they are being developing in day-to-day life. And of course, I would also love to know from Aryan and all the people around here that what can be water preservation activities which can be incorporated to develop a sustainable mining plan. So what industry can take up? So what can be these activities actually, which at least industrial post and pre-mining they can at least incorporate in their sustainable mining plan, which can be taken away throughout the coming generations as well, of course, at night, which is a very important and pressing issue all over wherever we find mines and natural resources excavation.
Mr. Nafs, what are your views onto the experience of what Deepan just had?
Thank you very much for sharing. I'll answer the easy one first, which is what can be done around mining. Mining is a very complicated issue, but there are a whole host of mining, if it has to be done, can be done in a more better way. It is all about regulation. It is all about ensuring that the commitments that are made on paper are actually done. It is, we do have mining is an issue. Yes, very much so. There are global ways in a variety of things, for instance, rehabilitation afterwards. We live in a world where we're using a lot of resources and mining cannot be stopped all at once. It means we have to work with it in a more sustainable manner. For groundwater and for water, it means a lot of recycling components. It also means buffering or burying off the area of mining with the environment, either by making screens, avoid that the groundwater is contaminated, or by other ways of insulating the activities of the mining to only the area where it is. So really, there are lots of procedures around this to do. It's a matter of money and regulation. The second thing about traditional knowledge is actually a little bit more complicated because it is something that is so broad and involves so many people. It is something we have come to realize globally, that the traditional knowledge actually is an example of really good sustainable management of land, of water, and of other resources. It is a win-win situation that we try to capture the learnings that are there and that we work together with local knowledge and existing experience and use that and share it to the people that have forgotten it. How we do that? There are lots of different ways of doing that, of capturing. But for me, one of the important things is what you are doing already. Talking about it, understanding it, sharing it, representing the stories. And that is one of the ways that we have to do. A lot of people that are traditional in many senses, don't have representation and are often overlooked and not considered in planning. And therefore, they are pushed aside. So what we can do is make sure that they have a voice and that they can speak and that they're represented and recognized for the intrinsic knowledge that they have. Thank you very much.
I must acknowledge this great discussion we just had on mining tribal people and deteriorating water bodies. This was just great. So let's move to our next panelist, Mr. Keshav Sani, and see what are his views. Mr. Sani, please unmute yourself.
So I'll share my experience, particularly like what I've been doing since last 5 years in youth engagement sector. As I said that 2030 agenda, right after 2015, we are focusing on that. And my personal experience is now at least, and this is very personal experience that I see many urban youth are getting involved in, sort of movements, sort of a lot of awareness program is going on. I think many of panelists will agree with me. But I rarely see, as an individual action, people are not really taking actions in terms of their own lifestyle or in terms of, small actions. So I'm particularly, this is sort of question for Aryan, that how and what sort of, motivation we can come up, particularly for the youth, youth engagement thing, that youth will try to adopt and try to live a sustainable lifestyle. So what are your views, Aryan, on this? I see you as a person who are bit active among youth as well. So how do you see this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm blessed with having children, and that's a discussion that we have with them quite regular. What is the future bringing? How can they live better than we have done? How can we, as I won't say elder, but people in above a certain age category, ensure that changes are made? Personal journey that you have when you realize climate change is present, it's affecting how you live. It also, some people then stop. They say like, I can't do anything. You've already gone to the next thing, which is, okay, let's do something about it. Organize, come together, get information, knowledge. And you will find that when you are reaching out to people, you get energy, you get connected. And I think what we have today is a good example of that, about connecting people and getting energy from one and the other. Personally, I get a lot of motivation from the power and the energy and also the anger that the youth has in the situation that is present. We have to do something, and we have to do things faster than we used to do. And how do we do that? By doing things together and motivating each other. Thank you.
I hope you got your answer, Mr. Sani. But let's move to Mr. Naresh Behra, and let's see what he has to share and what are his concerns regarding these issues of climate change, waste, and everything else. Mr.
Yes,
Behra.
Actually, I have also gone through these situations. Like in my teenage, I have also faced what I can do for the earth, what I have done. I read about all this situation. Before this, I am making rockets, solid fuel rockets. And then I decided, no, I will not develop that solid fuel rocket. I will slow down that development and work about our climate change. Then I've started my company, startup company, actually Gadget Reviver. Then I work about the e-waste and the things. And also in my free time, I also track the different Earth observation satellites and take data from that about what is the carbon concentration rising, how, what is the water table of various data. So I want to ask that, is there any free or open source website or software to check water table map data around the globe? and how to find 30 to 50 year history of the data?
The 30 or 50 year data is very complicated. The second problem is that groundwater is a hidden thing. You don't see it. So it is much behind compared to many other resources. The weather we have globally, rainfall we have globally, ocean levels we have globally. Groundwater is usually still at national level. And the India portal, there is one as well, where you can have some ideas and thoughts and data. One of the other things that you were mentioning motivates as well. You were mentioning about doing your personal journey again and how you're going towards recycling. And it's wonderful to hear that. When you think about products, many people think about the energy that it was to make it, or maybe the resources that went into it. When you do that, also consider and look at the water component that goes into it. Just to give you an idea, a phone, it takes at least 14 cubic meters of water to produce that phone. So whenever you throw away your phone, you basically throw away water. What's more interesting, you've got 14,000 kilos of water in your pocket. Yeah, that is called the water footprint, looking at how much it uses or was gone into production. And I'll put the link in the Facebook chat as well. I think you will like the thinking of the water footprint and how it can relate to products and how it can be used as a way of balancing globally. Thank you very, very much.
Yes, I got a new term that like carbon footprint, water footprint. I have another question. What's your view on hydrology condition now on Earth? Are we getting more floods, droughts, and water pollution? Is it going to rise shortly in next few years?
It is already rising. So it's not a question, is it going to happen? It is happening. Thousands of scientists got together, produced what is called the IPCC book of 2021, which is the 6th version of it. It's a huge book, but basically they say, we all agree climate change is happening and it is here and we need to act fast.
Yes.
If you're interested in global data, there's something called a disaster database. It's called MDOT. I'll put the chat, it's in the chat as well, where you can see which disasters happen where. And I did check, it is increasing globally, the floods and components to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Navs, and thank you, Naresh. I just had a question from audience, and I would, this question is for Mr. Deepan Diggal. I would request you to respond this. So the question is, Mr. Diggal. Yeah.
Please.
So the question is that, this question is from Shiny, Miss Shiny, and she's asking that, have you come across some practices that we can inculcate to adapt or mitigate climate change from tribal areas?
There are many activities with the practice. The first thing is this climate change during the agricultural practices also. You find the organic farming is a very crucial part, and these tribal people basically use the traditional methodology of farming, which doesn't involve any type of pesticides and chemical pesticides. And secondly, overutilization of resources means whatever you have, like preservation and plowing and this land utilization, proper utilization of land in terms of like plowing it perfectly, returning back which is taken away from the nature, like the leaves and all the things which has been put back into the land part. This also adds to the means what you can say development and environmental safety and adding to the environment part also. So I hope I have answered this.
Yeah. So I hope that clears out. So can we go to Ms. Sashmita Mahapatra and let's hear what are her experiences and concerns? Ms. Sashmita, you can take over.
Thank you, Vivek. See, we are talking about water concerns, groundwater issues, and floods, different issues of water. What exactly we all know that the issue arises because of the excess use of plastics and unnecessary use of resources. And also, we don't have habits of recycling, reducing, and reusing things. See, environment sustainability is vital for every economy in the world, and companies are considered to be the main players creating environmental and social problems, thus to be the source of lack of sustainability in society. Uh, Being an eco-entrepreneur, I would like to say that yes, eco-entrepreneurs are actually the changing agents and who are showing the path to others as how sustainability is kept in mind even when prioritizing the profit. I'm primarily working as an environmental activist and promoting eco-entrepreneurship. Having 11 years of experience in training and development, I understood that we need to create awareness on the need of the hour and awareness to accept the mindset to accept the eco-friendly lifestyle. So, what exactly I'm trying to ask? I have two questions actually for Arjun. I would go with one by one. Uh, First question I would like to ask that see, early Indian culture signifies more sustainable living, and we know that this age is called modernization, age of fast food, plastic. What is the impact of cultural practices in sustainable living? What are your find out on this?
I think that's something we can talk about for hours, particularly because a culture is different from place to place. But linking up to what you were saying and your passion for entrepreneurship and saying that companies are the ones creating the havoc. Let's look at something that happened in Europe. In the 60s of the last century, there was a lot of pollution ongoing. And basically, citizens and the government, or citizens first and then the government in line, were saying, we don't want this anymore. We want it to change. So there was a change that was brought on by consumers, by population at large, and driven by the government. And a lot of the companies which were very bad improved. So it's not necessarily bad. So there's something of social entrepreneurship. There are ways of doing business as well as making things, which is more sustainable than others. And that comes to the second component, the culture behind it. Certain parts, cultures have a throwaway culture where it's quicker and easier and cheaper to buy something new than to have something repaired. How that changes, it goes with the awareness that we're all creating. It's not a revolution that we can do straight away, but it's something that is changing, and the youth is actually driving a lot of it. To give you an example, in the EU now, there's the right to repair. Basically, if you buy something, you have a right, or you should be able to access spare parts for whatever you bought. So companies have to make spare parts available, therefore helping reduce and improving the recycling. It's not ideal, but there are ways of improving. Now, culture is a dynamic thing. It keeps changing. It will always change. The direction we're taking now, and we have to mention Greta as one of the driving forces on this, of raising awareness that enough is enough and we have to change. And the culture around us all is changing, hopefully positively, although some developments are always counterproductive. But I think, and when I hear, and I do have an optimistic view that it is possible, and we should learn from those that know more. And that is the historical way of doing things as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's I second with you because a recent survey report also says that Generation Z people they're always looking for the change in sustainability, and the main agenda is now how we can change in like concern is about global warming and all. So my second question is as you have already said that yes, mindset is slowly changing. Now, the second thing is that how can we shift consumers' behavior to accept more sustainable products? And what will be your suggestion for all youngsters who want to make their career in social entrepreneurship?
The second one first, it's passion. If you want to succeed in anything, make sure that you believe in what you're doing. And I think that people and the youth that are becoming aware of the challenges that climate change poses are much more likely to be able to make changes and be specific consumers. So the youth is here a change agent more than other groups. The second thing is regulation and nudges from government and things like that. So awareness campaigns to stop smoking was a good example. To wear seatbelts. But similar processes can be done towards eating less meat or promoting more sustainable choices that you have in your life. Switching off the tap, all those type of things can also be done to change. It requires a vision from the government or from the people creating them, but it is there. And we've seen it in COVID. A lot of change can happen at the global scale if the issue is big enough. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
So moving on to our next panelist, and we have Miss Smriti Swan. Miss Smriti, you can go ahead with your concerns.
Thank you, Vivek, for giving me this opportunity. So basically, as my area of expertise is in agriculture, so mostly agriculture are associated with three things. One is with farmers, second is with production, and third is with productivity. So when we focus on cultivation, like focusing on greenhouse gases, methane emission, soil organic carbon. So if we keep a track on that, or if you can calculate that, it's found that 14% of the greenhouse gas footprints are found. And the soil organic carbon is present in the soil is like 15 to 20 centimeter in the soil. So one simple question to Ayan is that, how do we balance that? Like, how do we balance, decrease the greenhouse gases and increase the soil organic carbon? Because soil organic carbon plays a very important role in cultivation, like in pursuing organic farming also. So basically my question is that.
It's a very dynamic thing, and I'm really happy you're bringing up agriculture, because agriculture in land use, in size, and also in importance, because it feeds us all, and also in the use of water is one of the main, or is the main partner. Soil, we've only learned, I would say, in the last 10 years that soil has an incredibly important component on carbon. Now that we are more aware of carbon capture and everything around it, we're learning more as we go along. One of the aspects actually is in moisture. If you keep the soil moist, wetter, it is able to keep and store much more carbon. So again, it's a win-win situation. If you manage your water better and you avoid very low groundwater tables, you also reduce the carbon that's being let go, and or storage is increased. Particular for this, I want to mention wetlands. Wetlands are found to be carbon sinks as they're being put. And they are places where a lot is stored and much more is being stored, because it captures it underwater and then the carbon can't go out and it stays nicely underwater. As agriculture, we have to make sure that we don't damage these wetlands anymore. Keep what is there and extend it again. Go back, try to get wetlands again and revive them. We've been draining too much for agriculture without realizing the consequences of it. And that is something that we really have to improve upon, and possibly gives maybe the quickest way a benefit on the water cycle and on the carbon cycle. It's again, for me, a win-win situation, but it does mean you find alternative ways of getting food. And the food can change if also people's diet change. And I've already spoken about reducing meat intake, but there are different ways of looking and nudging the population to make more sustainable choices. Does that help a little bit?
Thank you so much, Aryan, for your brief, short, simple answer. So I would ask one more question if you allow me to ask. So as in your PPT, you have mentioned like climate crisis also includes water crisis. So keeping in view that point, as like we all know that India's that staple food is like paddy, wheat, and maize, and those are basically more water intensive crops. So again, the same scenario comes that water availability. So if we shift the focus from the more intensive crop to less intensive crops like pulses, millets, so those are basically a less water consuming crops. So are we going to like feed our like food security? Are we going to face the challenges? How do we face the challenges of food security?
There are challenges everywhere. We have a water crisis. There are food issues. It's all related, and it's very difficult to think like, okay, what are we going to do? If I work on the water, then there's no food. If I work on the food, we get less land. There are solutions. I'll give you an example. The Netherlands is one of the smallest countries and has got huge agricultural output. And basically, there are complete recycled systems that don't even use earth anymore and recycled water in kind of greenhouses. It's intensive agriculture that actually allows energy saving, land saving, and water saving. But they're innovations and they're being scaled up. I would say it's in the phase where solar was 10 years ago. This type of agriculture is there now. It's still relatively expensive and difficult to do, but it is one of the solutions that is becoming visible as we go further ahead. It's not easy. This is why we're talking about integrated water resource management. You need to talk to each other. You can't take a decision for one thing without considering the consequences further down the line or for other colleagues, people, and particular the vulnerable people or people in vulnerable circumstances that might not have been realized. So it is collaboration, it is talking, it is sharing, and it is also regulation and setting targets. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. You have to measure your progress. Otherwise, we're not, you don't manage what you don't measure. Therefore, the NDCs, which is the national determined contributions and the commitments that are there, are important because it holds government and the population to account.
Yeah, that was a very nice answer. Water recycling technique. Even we can practice that in climate smart agriculture, also in controlled conditions. Yeah, thank you so much, Aryan.
Thank you.
Over to you, Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Nafs, for resolving all those concerns and providing the best solutions. So I guess this would help our panelists. And now we have the results coming out of those panel, poll questions we had. So can we have the results, please? Oh, great. So it's 96% of people say that, yeah, they are aware of this, that their water provisions are affected by climate change. That's great. And 2% say no, and the rest 2% say they don't know. But yeah, this is great that they are aware of it. So your comments, just a quick comment onto it, Mr. Nafs.
I'm happy that a lot of people are aware about it. I'm sad that it's the situation. But we can only start doing things when there's awareness. And I really encourage people to keep engaging on Facebook, outside Facebook, with each other, to keep looking at improving the water situation and reducing the impact of the climate change.
That's great. So let's have one more poll, opinion poll for this, for the audience. So the question is that, what comes first to your mind when we say climate change? Is it rising temperature, scanty rainfalls, floods, droughts, or earthquakes? I repeat, what comes first to your mind when we say climate change? The options are rising temperature, scanty rainfalls, floods, droughts, or earthquakes. You can respond to this just by, entering options in the comment. We'll look at the results later also. So meanwhile, I have received few questions from the Facebook Live, and I would like to go to that. So one question what I just received, it was a question for Ms. Mahapatra. In your experience, Ms. Mahapatra, this question is for you.
Yeah, right.
So in your experience as an eco-entrepreneur, do you see an appetite among consumer for eco-friendly products, or are they largely indifferent? Should I repeat
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, great.
See, as an eco-entrepreneur, what exactly I have observed that this is, like 50-50. I will not say that completely people are ready to accept the changes. Earlier, we were quite following our traditions, and we were having habit of reusing things. But now in this modernization world, what exactly my question was there, that we were moreover accepting the new things like single use of plastics and adapting the modern things. So there's something is missing. The gap is there. We need more practices, I call as green habit. That's what exactly can bring the changes in the mindset of people, where they can adapt eco-friendly products. So the appetite is not completely, I cannot say that yes, everyone is looking for eco-friendly products, because as an Indian, I always believe that always look for cheap and best product. So they will go with the price also. So our mindset is eco-friendly product means costly product. So that mindset we need to change. That is also another challenge we have.
So Mr. Naz, we have a question that is from audience, and it is being asked from Mr. Kaur. And the question is that currently India is facing a series of heat waves, which he read will also affect interior Odisha. So scientists agree that climate change is the root cause for this increasing heat waves and other extreme weather conditions. So the main question is that, are heat waves affecting water supply services in Odisha, especially for the poorest? And if so, what measures are or can be employed to assure that poorest are assured with sufficient drinking water quality and quantity?
It's not one individual thing that will secure it. It is basically looking at the whole process and the system around it. Within IOC, the organization I'm working with, we call it a WASH system. So basically the wider approach for people to be included in water provision, a number of things needs to be working. They have to be recognized, they have to be visible, they have to have a tariff that allows them to afford it. The drinking water quality has to be good. There has to be people and processes in part of that. There needs to be the water resource. So it's a wider component. Now, yes, it is going to be threatened. And basically, whenever we are planning, we should purposely have a pro-poor approach. Now, the pro-poor approach, or the identifying vulnerable groups or groups living in vulnerable circumstances, already helps a lot in preparing and looking what the solutions may be. It's going to be different in every situation. It may be by identifying an alternative way of providing water, either by tankers when there's a difficulty, or creating a different type of service that might be useful. Going for boreholes still, even in an urban society, may well be better than extending in a slum where there's very difficult to make pipes. The main point is make sure that there's inclusion of it. The amount of water that people with less funds and money are using is usually a lot less, and they're paying a lot more for it. The rich people are using water to irrigate their nice gardens, to take big baths. Yeah. So there is a whole lot of awareness and making sure that that balance is there as well. Usually, except in cases like Chennai recently or Cape Town, where really there's a whole urban water shortage, normally the main challenge is distribution. Less for those that have much and more for those that have less. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Navs, for this answer. And one question from my side, a bit on the lighter note. So I would like any one of the panelists may respond to it. So my question is this: do sending thank you mails at the end of each discussion add to global warming?
Yes, obviously it add to global warming.
Yes, yes.
It will consume energy in the server. So the energy, if it is coming for unconventional fossil fuel power source, then it will obviously it will.
And also, one more thing I would like to add, that we need to clear our spam box also time to time, as trash and spam box, which will help us to reduce the carbon footprint and energy also. That is also another fact.
Okay, so we should not encourage this habit of sending thank you mails. I hope we should start that. Yeah.
Let's put it in perspective. It's, I think, 3 grams per email that you send, but the energy that it creates on the other side and the connectivity, everything we do on the whole climate crisis is a balancing act. It's a balancing act. Should I send the email or not? It's a balancing act. How to save water. It's a balancing act. Do we go for mining? Do we not go for mining? It's a balancing act. How can we progress while making our lives better and more inclusive? So yes, it's possible. Everything we do is a balancing and adaptation on a personal note, but also in general. And the energy that it gives and the joy that it can give to receive a thank you note or things like that may well outweigh, in this case, the components. But there is indeed, internet also has got a consumption. And the phone, 14 cubic meters, just for having a phone in your pocket.
Do we have Mr. Sathak? Sathak, are you connected now?
Yes.
Okay, so I hope the connection was interrupted in between of your discussion.
Yeah,
so you can take over now.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for that. I won't talk much right now because since we are running out of time. So just two quick questions for Aryan. Not questions for, I want to put forward this before the panel for discussion. The first is that Netherlands being one of the countries where the water is well managed, or we can say it is managed in the best way. So just wanted to know about the lessons learned, challenges faced. And the second area is that how we can together mobilize the youth to work on different water management principles, and as we talked about mitigation and adaptation. So how we can communicate this, what can be the new ways of communication to communicate this mitigation and adaptation things to the people, so that we can change the behavior within them. And because the way it is communicated, the better the behavior change is. So I believe that. So these are the two things.
The second question, I think there are panelists who are in a better place how to engage with youth and how to keep that momentum going. But the first one might surprise you. What are the lessons learned from the Netherlands on water management? Because actually the foundation of it is one of the oldest democracies. Over 1,000 years ago, the Netherlands realized to be able to manage water requires people to agree and work together. So even older than our voting system or our parliament is a voting system for people that manage water. So that is one of the components. Whenever we do local elections, we also have an election for the people on our water boards. So that is actually one of the first things. The second thing is, it is something that requires time, but we have changed our way of working. We're no longer fighting water. We are now living together with water. So for instance, we've created space on the rivers to allow flooding, whereas before we were just avoiding flooding, building higher and higher and higher dikes. Now we have identified areas that if there is high water, those areas are low productive agriculture areas. We can flood them to avoid building much higher dikes elsewhere. That has been a massive shift in the way we've been thinking about water management in the Netherlands. And I would say the other thing is a lot of knowledge is available. There are quite a lot of outreach programs, connections of Netherlands expertise with global initiatives, trying to help and share the knowledge that is there. And this is a tiny example, but there are a lot of ways of doing it with universities, courses, also being offered to help and share the knowledge that's been going on. For the second one, engaging youth, I was actually going to ask maybe Keshal to also say something about that.
Well, meanwhile, we are ready with the poll results, what we had. We have the results coming up. So the question was that, what comes first to your mind when we say climate change? Was it rising temperature, scanty rainfalls, floods, droughts, and earthquake? So, oh, great. So 43% of the people think that it's rising temperature. I mean, the first thing that comes to their mind is rising temperature, 29% scanty rainfall, 14% floods, 11% drought, and 3% of them think that earthquake could also be one of the aspects of climate change. So may I just go to Smriti and let's see how does she respond to this? Smriti, your views onto it, that 43% people thinking that, I mean, the first thing what comes to their mind is rising temperature when we talk about climate change. How do you see this?
It's absolutely correct that rising temperature is one of the major issues nowadays. Even I particularly like my point of view is that temperature is one of the major issues.
Mr. Nas, your quick comment onto this?
If I would be now where most of you are, I would definitely say the rising temperature because of the heat that is striking the South Asia region at the moment. But once again, I would like to say rainfall, floods, and droughts are all water related. And the rising temperature is also water related. Again, water itself is a greenhouse gas, so it has a lot of consequences. The warmer it gets, the more moisture can be in the air. That itself is a blanket and also makes the rainfall more intense when it's cooling down again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So friends, I just realized that while discussing these crucial issues, the time has passed so quickly. And unfortunately, we have exhausted all our time limits. So just onto the concluding part, let's very quickly go to each of our panelists and see if they have any final thoughts. Just a line. So who would like to come first? Just your final thoughts, any message for the community from your side? Anyone can volunteer. Okay, so we have Smriti. Smriti, please come in.
So what I understood from this panel discussion was major issue was on climate change. So what my personal message and what I feel personally is that climate change should be understood in a bigger picture. It's like everyone is talking about climate change. We need to decrease greenhouse gases. We need to keep on this, that, XYZ. So what I feel is that action should come individually when combined in a community level. So what I feel, being a youth, and even youth are many of our youths are joined in a Facebook Live and over this Zoom meeting. What I feel is that youth should, like in school, colleges, youth should be like climate change should be like a educational toolkit kind of thing. So it should be discussed in a greater pace so that people will understand that yes, actually climate change is happening. So it should be like youth for climate series or youth for climate action kind of thing. So then only in a community level that can be solved. So yes.
Great. So Sushmita also raised her hand. Sushmita, just a line, a message from your side.
Sure, definitely. See, we all are watching this live session, and we may think, or many of us think that, okay, this is not my work, this is not my job. what can I do for this broader aspect, this broader problem. But one thing we can do, okay, at your home from morning to the night, we can save. At least we can close the tap water. We can say, stop using single use of plastic. That small things can bring changes. So that's what we can do. The small things we need to do, accept the eco-friendly lifestyle, and be the voice. What exactly we are trying to do.
So next we have Mr. Sarangi raising his hand. Can we, Mr. Sathak, please, just a
Yes,
line?
Yeah, thank you. Just briefing it, summing up it in one line, that groundwater is the lifeline underneath our feet. Like most of the time we don't see it. That's why we won't be able to relate like how much water is still there or how we're using it. So for that reason, I would suggest for great partnerships, great associations, sticking to sustainable SDG 17, which is most essential towards tackling those issues. So that's I would like it should be a revolution among the youths, among all the stakeholders to bring on this to come together and resolve the issues. Thank you.
Great. So, Mr. Deagle, your final thoughts onto this?
Yeah, I'd like to request, ask everybody, take a glass of water, hold it always, and just ask yourself, okay, great, and ask yourself that how long and what should I do to get this always, and how long I can have this glass of water in my hand and to drink. So what are the activities I should take on? So this must be question for everybody throughout your life whenever you are alive in this world. Thank you.
Great, perfect. So, Mr. Behra, what are your final thoughts or a message to community or to youth?
Yes, I want to say that problem is coming, we all know, and we have to take action. We also know that how to take action, how to handle these situations. It's up to us, up to this youth and our budding engineers. We have to solve it, and we have to look that find out the solutions in a economical and sustainable way. That's all.
So, Mr. Sani, Keshav Sani.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vivek. So I'll just say two words, which is like, let's do our bit, and we are stronger together. So let's do it together.
So, I just want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you all. You all have been such incredible speakers, and it was a treat to hear you all. A big thanks to all our panelists. I would also express my gratitude to whole team of organizers, the technical team, and above all, the audience for their time and patience. Thank you so much. And one last line from my side is that we are the last generation that can mitigate climate change. We can and we will. Thank you, everyone.